The prophecy of Daniel 9, historical and eschatological fulfillments. Daniel 9 provides a profound prophetic timeline, traditionally interpreted as addressing both Christ's first and second comings. The chapter's 77 weeks prophecy is rich with historical fulfillment and eschatological significance. First application: Christ's first coming. The prophecy's initial fulfillment pertains to the first advent of Christ. Here, the term week symbolizes a period of 7 years, a pattern consistent with prophetic scripture. When multiplied, the 77 weeks yield 539 years. 77 times 7 is equal to 539. This timeline begins with the decree of Cyrus to rebuild Jerusalem in 539 BC, Isaiah 44 verse 28, Ezra 1 verses 1 to 4, and culminates around 1 AD, marking the transition to the Christian era. This fulfillment highlights the precision of prophecy in aligning with Christ's arrival and the dawn of his ministry. Second application: Christ's second coming. The second fulfillment points to Christ's return and introduces a different interpretation of the week, where a week represents 1 year. This perspective connects the prophecy to the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, a celebration of divine revelation and redemption. The modern timeline begins with the formation of Israel in 1948, a landmark event in biblical prophecy, and unfolds through several key calculations. 1. 62 years plus 7 years equals 69 years. Beginning in 1948, 62 years lead to 2010, an important stepping stone in the prophetic timeline. Adding 7 more years brings us to 2017, a year associated with messianic anticipation. This was affirmed by the celestial event described in Revelation 12, the woman clothed with the sun, seen on September 23, 2017. 2. 70 years plus 7 years equals 77 years. Starting again from 1948, adding 70 years leads to 2018, marking the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period. Adding an additional 7 years brings us to 2025, completing the 77-year cycle. This culmination aligns with Sukkot, October 7, 2025, a festival symbolizing divine presence and ultimate restoration. The 7-year tribulation, 2018 to 2025. The tribulation period is identified as beginning on Rosh Hashanah, September 9, 2018, and ending on Sukkot, October 7, 2025. These years are characterized by significant global and spiritual events, serving as markers of humanity's progression toward the fulfillment of God's kingdom. This dual application of Daniel 9's prophecy weaves together historical events, celestial signs, and prophetic scripture, illustrating the interconnectedness of divine revelation and human history. The central role of the number 7 as a bridge between the 62 and 70 years reflects the intricate design of God's timeline. Connections to Revelation and modern events. Daniel 9 verse 26 speaks of the Messiah or anointed king being removed after the 7 plus 62 years, correlating with Revelation 17's reference to the beast that was, is not, and yet will be. Daniel 9 verse 27 further highlights the midpoint of the 7 years, pointing to February 21, 2022, a date linked to geopolitical events involving Russia. Specifically, this aligns with Revelation 13 and the bear, as Russia's actions and the imposed sanctions eroded confidence in global financial systems tied to the US dollar. Additionally, Revelation 17's reference to the beast that was, is not, and yet will be can be interpreted to describe Donald Trump, in office from 2017 to 2020, was, out of office from 2021 to 2024, is not, and returning in 2025, yet will be. This interpretation further intertwines modern history with biblical prophecy. Fractal patterns and prophetic fulfillment. The concept of fractals in prophecy suggests that prophetic events and timelines are not linear but rather exhibit repeating patterns at different scales. This idea can be applied to the dual fulfillment of Daniel 9's prophecy, where historical and eschatological events mirror each other in complex, self-similar ways. Smaller scale model: Christ's first coming. The initial fulfillment of Daniel 9's prophecy, which pertains to Christ's first coming, can be seen as a smaller scale model of the larger prophetic timeline. This period, marked by the decree of Cyrus to rebuild Jerusalem and culminating in the advent of Christ, sets a precedent for understanding how prophetic patterns unfold. The precision of this timeline, aligning with significant historical events, demonstrates the intricate design of divine prophecy. Larger scale model, Christ's second coming. The second fulfillment, pointing to Christ's return, represents a larger scale model that encompasses broader themes of restoration, conflict, and redemption. This period begins with the formation of Israel in 1948 and includes key prophetic milestones such as the 62 years leading to 2010 and the 7-year tribulation period from 2018 to 2025. The fractal nature of this fulfillment is evident in how these events mirror the patterns established in the initial fulfillment. Recurring themes and interconnectedness. By recognizing the fractal nature of Daniel 9's prophecy, we can appreciate the recurring themes and interconnectedness of prophetic events throughout biblical history. These themes include restoration. Both fulfillments involve periods of rebuilding and renewal, whether it is the physical rebuilding of Jerusalem or the spiritual restoration associated with Christ's return. Conflict. The prophecy highlights periods of tribulation and conflict, reflecting the ongoing struggle between divine and worldly powers. Redemption. Central to both fulfillments is the theme of redemption, with Christ's first coming bringing salvation and his second coming promising ultimate restoration. Fractals and modern events. The fractal patterns in prophecy also extend to modern events, where historical and eschatological timelines intersect. For example, the geopolitical events involving Russia in 2022 and the celestial signs in 2017 can be seen as part of the larger fractal pattern of prophetic fulfillment. These events, when viewed through the lens of fractal prophecy, reveal the intricate and layered ways in which divine revelation unfolds. Conclusion. Understanding the fractal nature of Daniel 9's prophecy allows us to see the interconnectedness of historical and eschatological events. By recognizing these patterns, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity and precision of divine prophecy, as well as the recurring themes of restoration, conflict, and redemption that permeate biblical history. Daniel 12, the 2625 days, years, prophecy. The prophecy in Daniel 12 is often interpreted using the day-to-year principle, where each day represents a year. This interpretation begins with the year 607 BC. Approximately 2 years after the Battle of Megiddo in 609 BC, a significant turning point in the region's history. The end of continual sacrifice. According to Daniel 1, the continual sacrifices in the temple ceased due to its defilement. This event marks the starting point for the 1,290 years mentioned in Daniel 12. From 607 BC, adding 1,290 years brings us to 683 AD. The year when the construction of the Dome of the Rock began on the Temple Mount. This event is seen as an abomination and a connection to the idolatrous faith of Islam, and it foretells the Battle of Armageddon between Persia, Iran, and Israel. The 1,335 years. From 683 AD, adding 1,335 years brings us to 2018. This year is significant as it aligns with the prophecy in Daniel 9, which speaks of 70 weeks, or years. Thus, 2,625 years from 607 BC also leads to 2018, marking it as a pivotal year in biblical prophecy. So, Daniel 12 provides affirmation that the end-time tribulation runs from 2018 to 2025. The final 7 years. Starting from September 10, 2018, during Yom Teruah and Rosh Hashanah, we enter the period described as time, times, and half a time, or 3.5 years, Daniel 12 verse 7. This period is doubled to represent a total of 7 years, ending on September 23, 2025, which coincides with Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets. This date is linked to the trumpet call and the return of Jesus as described in 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 13 to 17. Daniel 8, a dual fulfillment. The prophecy in Daniel 8 is seen as having a dual fulfillment, with significant events spanning both ancient and modern history. The 2,300 days. The 2,300 days prophecy begins from the summer solstice of 2017, which falls within the 69th week or year as referenced in Daniel 9. Counting 2,300 literal days from June 20, 2017, brings us to October 7, 2023. This date is notable as it marks the start of the conflict when Hamas attacked Israel with the support of Persia, Iran, an event seen as the beginning of Armageddon. The 666 Days of the Beast. In Revelation 13, the number 666 is associated with the beast. Counting 666 days from October 7, 2023, leads us to August 3, 2025, which coincides with the 9th of Av, a day of mourning in Jewish history. This date is also exactly 2,520 days from September 10, 2018, and is seen as a potential time for the destruction of Babylon, Washington, D.C., with a nuclear warhead. Historical context in the U.S. Constitution. Dating back to the construction of the Palace of Susa around 512 BC, counting 2,300 years brings us to 1788, the year the U.S. Constitution was ratified. By applying the ratio of times, and half a time to the difference between 2,520 years and 2,300 years, we derive 126 years, times, 63 years, time, and 31.5 years, half a time, totaling 220.5 years. This calculation leads us to the spring of 2009, close to the 62 weeks prophecy in Daniel 9. The financial system and the mark of the beast. Adding 126 years from 1788 brings us to 1914, the year the fractional reserve banking system was established, which is connected to the mark of the beast financial system. Adding 63 years from 1914 brings us to 1977, the year of the Jamaican Accord, when the IMF ended the convertibility of currencies into gold. Finally, adding 31.5 years from 1977 brings us to 2009.25, marking the implementation of quantitative easing. These dates collectively establish the gradual implementation of the mark of the beast system. The second fulfillment of 666. Using the number 666 in a second fulfillment, we interpret it as 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days. Starting from the vernal equinox of 2009, adding 6 years brings us to the vernal equinox of 2015. Adding half a year leads to the autumn equinox on September 23, 2015, and 6 days later is September 28, 2015. This date is significant due to the occurrence of the fourth blood-red lunar eclipse in 2014 and 2015 series, which fell on Passover and Sukkot. This day is linked to the identification of the Nemean, ecclesiastical Antichrist, Pope Francis, who made a significant visit to the U.S. in 2015. As Pope Francis departed from Philadelphia, a blood-red moon shone, marking him as evil in God's sight. This interpretation highlights the fractal nature of biblical prophecy, with dual fulfillments spanning different eras and events. 2 secular prophecies outside of Scripture. Nathan's prophecy, 2015. Background: Nathan, a 15-year-old secular Jewish boy, had a near-death experience on September 28, 2015, during the Feast of Sukkot, which coincided with a blood-red moon eclipse. Vision: Nathan claimed to have seen visions of the end times, including the identification of Barack Obama as Gog, the political Antichrist. His visions included apocalyptic scenarios and the coming of the Messiah. Prophecy of the Popes by Saint Malachy, 12th century. Background: Saint Malachy, a 12th century Archbishop of Armagh, is attributed with a series of 112 cryptic Latin phrases predicting the succession of Catholic popes. Content: the prophecy, first published in 1595, allegedly foretells the characteristics of each pope from Celestine II onwards. The final pope, referred to as Peter the Roman, is said to preside over the Church during a time of great tribulation, leading to the destruction of Rome. These prophecies, while not part of canonical scripture, have intrigued many due to their dramatic and symbolic nature. Do you find these prophecies compelling or thought-provoking? Optic effects in spiritual perception. When a mortal human being taps into the spiritual world and receives an expression, they often experience a kind of optic effect. This phenomenon can be likened to viewing material in the spiritual world through an optic lens, resulting in some distortion in the image or material they see. Such distortions may include inversion and reversal. When individuals access the spiritual realm, their perceptions are influenced by the limitations of human cognition and sensory processing. The spiritual world operates on a different plane of existence, where symbolism and metaphor play crucial roles. As a result, the information received may appear distorted, inverted, or reversed. This distortion can manifest in various ways, such as seeing events unfold backward or interpreting symbols in a manner that contrasts with their earthly counterparts. Cultural interpretations of optical illusions. Throughout history, different cultures have explored the interplay between light, shadow, and perception to create optical illusions that challenge our understanding of reality. These illusions often serve as metaphors for spiritual experiences, highlighting the ambiguity and complexity of perceiving the unseen. For example, ancient civilizations used visual tricks in art and architecture to shape human perception, revealing a sophisticated understanding of how the eye perceives images. The inversion of reality. The concept of inversion is not limited to spiritual experiences but extends to our everyday perception of reality. In his book The Inversion, Kingsley L. Dennis explores how our brains have been programmed to accept a manipulated reality, compelling us to participate in and sustain it. This idea resonates with the notion that spiritual visions may be inverted or reversed, reflecting a deeper truth that challenges our conventional understanding of the world. These insights into the optic effects of spiritual perception and the cultural significance of optical illusions offer a fascinating glimpse into how humans interpret and navigate the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms. Do you find these concepts intriguing or have any thoughts on how they relate to your own experiences? Additional insights on Nathan's prophecy and the prophecy of the popes. Nathan's prophecy. Nathan's vision initially identified Barack Obama as the Antichrist, but this vision was later understood to be reversed. Nathan correctly foresaw the significance of the date September 28, 2025, but the perception shifted from Obama to Pope Francis. This shift also redirected the focus from Pope Francis as the ecclesiastical Antichrist to Obama. On the same significant date, Revelation 13's reference to 666 pointed to Pope Francis as the beast. The period of 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days is discussed in the Daniel 8 section of this paper, further emphasizing the prophetic timeline. Prophecy of the Popes. In the prophecy of the popes, the destruction of the city of Rome by fire was also reversed. Instead, it is interpreted that Washington, D.C., another city built on 7 hills, will be destroyed. Revelation 17 describes a city built on 7 hills, which many traditionally associate with Rome, but this interpretation suggests a different city. The prophecy accurately describes Peter the Roman as Pope Francis, the last pope who will reign during the final years of the tribulation and be present when Christ returns to judge his people. These additional insights provide a deeper understanding of how prophetic visions can be subject to interpretation and reversal, reflecting the complex nature of spiritual perception and the symbolic language used in prophecy. Do you have any thoughts or questions about these interpretations? The role of optics in secular prophecies. The empirical science of optics is indeed at play in understanding secular prophecies. Optics, the study of light and vision, provides a framework for interpreting how individuals perceive and interpret spiritual visions. When a person taps into the spiritual world, their experiences can be likened to viewing images through an optical lens, which can cause distortions, inversions, and reversals. When individuals access the spiritual realm, their perceptions are influenced by the limitations of human cognition and sensory processing. The spiritual world operates on a different plane of existence, where symbolism and metaphor play crucial roles. As a result, the information received may appear distorted, inverted, or reversed. This distortion can manifest in various ways, such as seeing events unfold backward or interpreting symbols in a manner that contrasts with their earthly counterparts. Prophecy of the popes and optical distortion. In the prophecy of the popes, the city of Rome being destroyed by fire was reversed. It is really the city of Washington, D.C. that is destroyed, as described in Revelation 17, also a city built on 7 hills. The prophecy of the popes is accurate in describing Peter the Roman as Pope Francis, the last pope who will reign during the last years of the tribulation and be present when Christ returns to judge his people. These insights into the optic effects of spiritual perception and the cultural significance of optical illusions offer a fascinating glimpse into how humans interpret and navigate the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms. Do you find these concepts intriguing or have any thoughts on how they relate to your own experiences? Scrambling of elements through spiritual optics. The four elements of Washington, D.C., Rome, Barack Obama, and Pope Francis are intricately scrambled through the lens of spiritual optics, creating a complex and intertwined narrative. In Nathan's prophecy, the initial identification of Barack Obama as the Antichrist was later reversed, shifting the focus to Pope Francis as the ecclesiastical Antichrist. Similarly, the destruction of Rome, traditionally seen as the city built on 7 hills, was reinterpreted to signify the destruction of Washington, D.C., another city with 7 hills. This scrambling effect, caused by the distortions and inversions inherent in spiritual perception, highlights the fluid and symbolic nature of prophetic visions. The interplay between these elements reflects the deeper truths and hidden connections that challenge our conventional understanding of reality, revealing a multifaceted and dynamic spiritual landscape.